Have you ever listened to a person talk for less than a minute and known you weren't going to get along with that person?
What did they say?
Yes, this guy hopped into our Discord group a few months back. He was a friend of a friend, but he didn't think to just add him to our server, not our group chat. We all hop into a call, and first thing he does is make some remarks that are very politically sensitive, sends some graphic photos and made some inappropriate remarks. Didn't expect to meet someone and have him offend 6 people in the span of 10 minutes. Told me, yay, all women are bitches, you included. No offense. Oh, none taken. You're clearly not the type of person whose opinion I care about. How does one think no offense changes anything about this obviously offensive statement? Parent of one of my kids' friends at school said there was a mouse in their house and his wife wanted him to kill it, but he didn't want to kill it, but he didn't want to kill any creatures. He wants to make friends with them instead. But wife insisted, so he threw his shoe at it and eventually managed to hit it, but it wasn't dead, so he threw his shoe at it another 4 times. It still wasn't dead, so he poured boiling water over it to kill it. It still didn't die, so he poured boiling water over it again. It still wasn't dead, so he decided to leave it alone in the hopes that it would peacefully pass away. The logic of being too squeamish to kill something, and instead decide to torture it to death slowly in the most agonizingly painful way, absolutely blew my mind. He poured boiling water over it. Oh my fucking God! Like Jesus fuck, man! That is some monstrous shit right there! I didn't want to kill it. I wanted to make friends, but my wife said no, so I tortured it to death. Years ago, me and my ex-husband went to see a movie with an older colleague of his. Before the movie, we had dinner at like a chain restaurant steakhouse type place. Staff on the floor was all 20. I never met this man before, but in the first few minutes of sitting down and looking at the menu, he very confidently told us how he came there a lot and flirted with the female staff because they loved the attention. The best part, his daughter worked there. All I could think was how I would literally cringe myself through the floor if I was 20 and my 50-year dad came into my place of work and perved on my co-workers because he didn't understand that they only put up with him because they are paid to do so. My papa would come into the restaurants that I worked in. I usually was his server. But once someone else got his table, my co-workers would fight to take him. My papa was a funny dude that left enormous tips and joked with everyone around him that was cool with it. He was one of those tall, skinny guys that just looks like a guy you could talk to. I remember I had told him about one of my co-workers having a rough time of it. He came in, specifically requested her, and then left her a $100 bill as a tip. When I got home, he asked if she had gotten the tip. Of course she had, and then broken down hugging me, telling me that my grandfather was the best person she'd ever met. She wasn't wrong. Reminds me of a relative's boyfriend's dad. He was a regular at the bar she worked at, but got banned. Didn't get banned when he slapped another waitress's ass, same age as the girl, dating his son, yuck. But the next night he got banned after bragging to that girl's boyfriend about slapping her and trying to start a fight with him. I was in a job interview once, and the manager cut me off mid-sentence to jump to a weird conclusion. What do you think the performance of this algorithm would be? Me. Oh, it'll be knee. Oh, it'll be name times. In. Oh, you think it's going to be. You think it'll be. That's ridiculous. There's no way it would just be, me. No, you gotta let me finish speaking. He then cut me off mid-sentence twice more during our conversation. We didn't get along. Dude was a total tool. I hate people who do that. They don't listen to a thing you say, like they are counting how long they have to let you talk before they can butt in with their obviously superior comment. There are different levels to being a psychic. I'm on the purple level, so I can talk to the dead, said a new employee at my previous job. Nope. Oh, are you talking about Dodd? I love fantasy stuff. Anyone come talk to the dead, though. They are generally really good listeners, rarely interrupt or judge you. They talk negatively about someone else in a very judgy way. There was this mom in my daughter's school who seemed to know everyone. She talked to me and she spoke so bad about these people. Then, moments later, I saw her interacting in a friendly way with those she was judging. My eyes rolled so much I could see my brain telling me not to get involved with her. And I was right, because by the time school year ends, her friends hated her, and they were talking behind her back too. A girl that used to be my best friend is like this. It was the weirdest thing to see her bitch about all these people, then have Insta photos up a few days later with them. I didn't notice she did this until our friendship was on the line, so I asked other people if she did this, and they said yes too. I know I'm not supposed to ask, but I need to know. It's not for work or anything. What religion are you? I belong to the Church of Our Lady of Perpetual Lawsuits. Reply, can you send me that in an email? New guy at work, first coffee break. He started complaining about his ex who had full custody of the kids for some unknowable reason, and also how he'd like to slash her throat with a rusty knife. Nice to meet you too. Don't think I'll be taking breaks with you. It was nice of him to clear up why his wife divorced him and why he couldn't be with his kids. Reminds me of that one guy a few years ago at work. Guy starts talking about what kind of shit work we are all doing, and then says wouldn't surprise me if one day someone with a gun comes in here and kills people. Aha, right. Thank God this dude got fired a couple weeks later. You don't scare me. Wasn't trying to scare you in the slightest. She showed up to a little get-together, and the person who invited her said that they would be taking bets on who could sit with her for more than 30 minutes. $10 per person. Winner kept the pot. I assumed they were just being rude and planned to tell her of her friend. Plans as soon as she showed up. She walked in, looked at me and scoffed and asked if the grey car outside belonged to me. I said yes. She told me that with the money that car cost, I could have bought something nicer. Or, well, whatever. I went to get a drink and sat to watch the crowd gather around her. I already didn't like her, but she went on to tell everyone about how she could never date someone who had a crappy credit score or couldn't pay their vehicles off after buying it. Someone who wanted to quit the contest asked for a cigarette. She opened up her purse and showed everyone a fresh pack of smokes, and then told everyone why she doesn't smoke and why anyone who asks for a cigarette is either too broke to buy them or doesn't plan ahead of times. The guy asked her for one of her cigarettes. She said no and put them back in her purse. She talked about all the cars she bought. Basically, her parents would co-sign for her and pay the car off to build her credit, and she would give them a few thousand to pay them back. She was nuts and wouldn't stop talking. I disliked her, but was also fascinated with her. She was super weird. Update. So I have gotten a few questions about this girl and that night. Also, who is Gina? There was something like 15, 20 people there, and most entered the contest. I think the pot got up to $120. The winner was just some guy who I didn't know. He spent the money getting everyone McDonald's and beer, so he was pretty cool. She was about 22, 23. She had just finished getting her high school diploma because she had dropped out to make money. According to her, I think she sold some milkshake things and fitness plans with some man. For those wondering what happened to her, I'm not 100 what happened to her. She wasn't my friend, but she did show up to a few parties I was at, and she seemed calmer. She used to bring her own bottle of liquor and wouldn't share, which was kind of funny because on one occasion they caught her filling her bottle with a bottle of Jack that someone had brought and left on the kitchen counter, but she swore that all she drank was Hennessy and Fireball. If she doesn't smoke, why does she have a pack in her purse? And it's not even for sharing, given someone asked and she said no. Gina Linetti, undercover. I was listening to the Nexivan podcast and the clip of the founder saying he has 225 IQ. If I walked into a room and heard someone say that, I'd walk right back out. I used to brag about my IQ score. It was off of a free internet test. I was 14. I learned better. LOL. I used to give tours at Universal Studios, Hollywood, and got hired, trained with a 26-year-old girl who would casually mention her 140 IQ several times. Congrats. Alana, and 10 years later, I see you're still giving those scripted tours. Anybody who talks about their IQ is probably an idiot. The quiet boy at school sat next to me and told me how hard he felt when he took a shit and how many times he ejaculated that way. I never sat next to him again. Are you from the UK, and was the kid's name Chris? Dude must have had an enlarged prostate or something. It's normal to get a little stimulated during a big shit, but that's just excessive. When I was a teen, I remember a couple of my female friends telling me about walking in on a guy on the toilet with a boner. Part of me wonders if he was like this guy, and part of me wonders if he was just very up-oriented and I should cover for him, lol. Either way, I wish I knew then what I knew then, what I knew now. Some people might say I'm an asshole. but I just tell it how it is. 99's chance they are an asshole that I don't want to be around. A lot of people have told me I'm an asshole, and I've decided that it warrants no further self-reflection. Was a customer at work. Naturally, I wouldn't be friends. But even in a setting where we could become friends, it wasn't happening. I came up to her to see if she had any questions about our critters. I work in a pet shop, and the very first thing she asked was if parakeets could talk because she wanted to teach them racial slurs. Biggest nope of my life. Imagine trying to explain to someone why your bird is racist. Meet your teacher day before my kiddo started kindergarten, and this other parent literally bragged that her kid was completely illiterate, couldn't stand being read to, and she hated reading too. As a teacher, I can tell you who my least favorite parents are every year on day one. It's not the conservative parents or liberal parents. It's not the Christians or the pagans. It's the parents who tell me they don't read or hate to read. One of the go-to questions I ask during the get-to-know-you time is if they've read anything interesting over the summer. I get parents who tell me about fun beach reads or news articles. Some have read frou-frou, hippie mindfulness, parenting books, or spiritual self-help books. All those parents are just fine. The ones who say, I don't like to read, are always the hardest parents to work with. Their kids don't do homework. They look down on the academic concepts I'm trying to teach. They roll their eyes at parent meetings when I talk about the importance of experiential education or involved learning. The crossover between kids who don't take school seriously and kids with a parent that tells me they don't read or hate reading is nearly an identical group of kids. Shockingly, the kids who grow up in homes that hate literacy are difficult students to teach. New guy at work. Super fake by being overly excited and super overly comfortable with everyone in the first minute.
He's all mommy, this and Popeye. That to everyone and very overly touchy.
We were almost all Hispanics there, and everyone was uncomfortable. First phone call of the day, he hangs up cursing and taking it super personally that someone hung up on him. Daily occurrence in customer service. After about 6 months, I put in my 2 weeks' notice solely because I couldn't work next to or with him anymore. He would also get overly gossipy and personal. My boss rejected my notice and transferred him. He couldn't stand the guy either. No one could. Fuck, I had to scroll too far to see this. People who try to force best friend vibes with everyone have 100 and turned out to be creeps or psychos in my life.
Like, fucking chill. We don't know each other, and that's fine.
We don't need inside jokes on the first day. I'm not literally your spirit animal. Always comes off so transactional. Like if I say the friendship things, I can get what I want from anyone. No. Let it happen naturally. If we vibe, we vibe. If we don't, cool. How did they reject a notice? The new neighbor, who after introducing himself pointed to his chest and says, instant asshole, just add beer. That's what the family says. Nah, we're not gonna be neighbor pals. Fuck you, you are an asshole, even without beer. When people claim to be an asshole, believe them. Holy shit, I'm literally wonder if we know the same person. His name was also had just started a job, and within a minute of meeting one of my new colleagues, he waxes lyrical about how weak it is that one of our other colleagues uses an inhaler, oblivious to the fact I myself use an inhaler, though my asthma is mild and well-managed. Ironically, the shit-talking colleague in question had no discernible chin and looked very out of shape himself. I started my FINA a few months ago, and one of a common starter conversation with postgraduates you just meet is, what is your thesis about? Well, I get asked the question first, and after describing my dissertation theme, the other guy goes, oh, I see. Well, mine is actually important, with a very condescending tone. Well, pal, fuck you too, I guess. Asked me, do you mind if smoke? Then proceeded to take out a meth pipe. This is hilarious, but yay, nah, not pal material. True story from my cabbie days. 2 young blokes got in the back a good halfway to fucked up. One pulls out a cigarette, said, can I smoke this? I said, sorry mate, smoking is banned in these cabs, it's the law even for me. Then I added as a joke, weird, they go to all the trouble with laws and signs and logos for smoking tobacco and nothing for smoking crack. Hey, no laugh in return, but 2 seconds later, I hear the spark of a lighter. What are you doing back there? A reply with a lung full of smoke, smoking crack. I pretty much just had to shrug at that point. I set myself up for that, and I'd left myself fuck all legs for standing on. I retired that joke from my recycled passenger banter. You live and learn. I had a friend do exactly that while we drove down the highway. Like literally, can I smoke in here? Sure, I don't mind. Brings out meth on tinfoil from pocket. I had that once, but I was a teenager, run away drinking a 40-hour at this beach on Vancouver Island, and this guy asked I wanted to smoke some cake, and I said yes, not knowing he meant meth, and my other homeless teenage friend had to tell me. So he saved me from meth that day, which me and that friend ended up snorting for a couple of years later. So not like your story at all, I guess. We had just moved into a new house. An older gentleman, he was 65 and I was 35 at the time, came across the street towards me and stuck out his hand. I shook it and he said, "We love new neighbors, as long as they're white." I guess I should be glad I can pass. Oof, reminds me of when my parents put their house on the market a few years back, and a neighbor across the street they barely talked to came over and started saying how sad she was to see that they were moving. My mom said something about how she'd make sure to find her some good new neighbors, to which Susan, from across the street, replied that she's sure they would so long as they didn't sell to any black people. According to my mom, those last two words were a barely audible whisper, as if some black people were hiding in the bushes, just waiting to pounce on a house being up for sale. From that day forward, Susan from across. Susan from across the street had her nickname changed to the much more brief racist Susan. My mom also said that had any black families put an offer on the house that was a little below what they were hoping for, she would be quite tempted to take the offer just to spite racist Susan. As a black man, I love outwardly open racists. It makes the contact clear. Not neighbor, but a co-worker at one of my older jobs kind of did that to me. First night working there, he comes up to me and says, "Fucking coloreds, never tip." I was absolutely shocked by that. Both in why the hell did you think it was cool to come up to me and say that, and also at the use of coloreds was not something I had heard in real life. He learned I'm a physicist and immediately started talking about infinite energy, like perpetual motion. Add multiple conspiracy theories about how academia is censoring the real science, and you have my former friend. Every time somebody brings up infinite energy, I fondly remember one of my students. His ideas, had he implemented them, would given everybody cancer, blown himself and others up, and brought up a hella lot of patent infringement lawsuits. All in the name of infinite energy. You're late. I've been here for 10 mines already. I was only 5 mines late for the date because I was looking for parking and had let him know. In Germany, this conversation wouldn't be noteworthy at all. Started at a new job, went for a team dinner, and the very first thing he did was talk about how bad the dating scene was in the city and how ugly all the women are. Dating scene was absolutely fine. I pull out of the conversation, and then he just continues to ramble on about how smart he is vis everyone else. Safe to say, I've been avoiding him since. Asked a guy what he does at a business networking event. Well, I'm a chiropractor but looking to get out. How come? All these Me Too accusations. In another state, I had 3 of them. Good thing none of them went to the bar. Edit. He probably said board instead of bar. As soon as he started complaining about Me Too accusations, I pretty much tuned him out. Me at my first day on the job, on my lunch break, coworker. Are you Chinese? Me? Yeah, coworker. I don't like Chinese food. Walks away. Don't eat me then. Literally last night was at a local pool comp and went to introduce myself to my second round opponent. We shake hands and his first words to me are weak fucking handshake, bro, followed by "I hope you like banter, mate," then proceeded to talk shit about every aspect of my game. The worst part was he was actually good at pool, so it just seemed like he was generally a cunt. Some of his other opponents got it a lot worse than I did as well. Highlight of the night was when the comp host basically yelled in his face, "Everyone in this room fucking hates you," which received a round of applause. He didn't seem to understand why that was. Just banter broed it. Aha, the comp is 90 regulars that are there every week. This was the guy's first time playing there. He knew no one except for the couple of mates he brought. I can assure people calling me a liar that he was universally hated. He ended up losing the final, which received more of a response than the host yelling at him, "But yay, Lord." I don't even know why I'm responding to this. I guess I have never had this much attention on anything I've ever shared on the internet. Hate when people use banter as a loophole for just straight up being an asshole. Banter is cool and all, but when you can't read the room, haven't established a proper connection with the opponent yet, and talk in a way that makes it seem like you mean it, you're just a socially awkward person with main character syndrome. She was complaining the 15-year-old kid who just fled from the war in Ukraine wasn't working hard enough at his dishwashing job. The kid doesn't want to be alone in a dishwashing kitchen all day, not able to speak to anyone. He should be in school at home with all his friends. Of course he's not excited about the stupid dishes. The lack of compassion was astounding, and she was indeed a wretched person, so my initial impression was totally correct. I was talking to a girl in college and she made some remark about, yay, like when you test your boyfriend to make sure he loves you, and I remember thinking, you seemed so normal. I'm going to fuck up your face. I met one of my new colleagues at a barbecue that was being hosted by our work. I, a man, drove with another co-worker, a woman and a friend of mine, so we arrived together. When I was alone for a moment, this guy, whom I've never spoken to before, comes up next to me and says, "Yo dude, you hitting that?" Gestures to my friend, I said no. And she also has a boyfriend. I said no. And she also has a boyfriend. He very exaggeratedly says, damn yada yada. He got fired 2 years later for sexually harassing an intern. I notice you're big on the phrase yada yada. I hate that our boss is a chick. Bitches make the worst bosses. Lunch break of his first day on the job. You know what? I bet she's never heard it phrased that way before and would appreciate the feedback.
Why don't you tell her before you clock back in?
Yeah, I met a guy my dad knew that took early retirement rather than have a woman for a boss. He'll be living on a much smaller pension, all because he couldn't work another few years under a woman. Let the end-doer do it. After my then manager self-informed a new hire of his next task, which apparently he found beneath him.